I think it's fair to say that Rift Apart is kind of a miracle game. So many platformer series throughout the years have died, excluding, of course, the big two, Mario and Sonic, but Ratchet and Clank have always somehow stuck around. Many fans, including myself, have waited years and years for that follow-up game after Into the Nexus, and more specifically, A Crack in Time. Rift Apart is finally that follow-up game. It's no secret that the past decade of Ratchet & Clank was different. More experimental, I guess, would be a better way of describing it. And it was odd, sort of, waiting for that next game that would kind of take us back to what we wanted. Well, I have good news! Rift Apart is fantastic. Old and new fans will be very happy to know that we are finally back in the mainline series with a bunch of new stuff. Oh boy. Now, my analysis or review won't be amazing here because I don't have a PlayStation 5, but no, I have played through the whole game with my good pal, Nada Zip. She's a cool artist, so you should go check her stuff out. Anyways, here's a really weird review and analysis of this game from someone who's clearly way too obsessed with this series. Yeah. Beginning. First off, this is the most visually impressive game I have ever seen. There are a lot of other insanely good-looking games, of course, but Rift Apart is no joke, you guys. It's insane how detailed everything in this game is. You can literally zoom into Ratchet's armor and see little bits of damage and reflections everywhere. It's crazy. This game has arguably the best models for these characters. I absolutely love how Insomniac utilized the cartoony nature of the series and made these models so close to the concept art. It's an insanely expressive and fun to watch. Very spoilery. I really love how the alternate counterpart characters look specifically. All of their designs are super fun. I absolutely adore Captain Quantum and Kit's designs. They're just so perfect, yes. One thing I guess I can nitpick, which this is really nitpicking, so you know I'm just crazy, but there are some scenes that can cross between the uncanny valley a little bit. More specifically, for some reason, a lot of Rivet's cutscenes have mocap in them, and it just sort of gives me, or gave me, a bunch of Sonic flashbacks. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it makes it a little weird, especially when you see animations that were clearly hand animated and are way too cartoony. So I don't know, I just thought I'd mention it. Okay, just like with nearly every new entry to the series, Rift Apart manages to add new and interesting mechanics to the gameplay, making this the most refined game in the series. Seriously, there's a lot of movement that is satisfying in this game, especially when you unlock the hover boots, which are a welcome return. They utilize the triggers in the DualSense, and I thought it was really super cool, having both Ratchet and Rivet skate around like Shadow. But yeah, it's pretty much your run-of-the-mill Ratchet and Clank gameplay, except what's added, haha, yes, which is of course the Phantom Dash. This is a super cool addition to the standard gameplay. Phasing in and out of enemies is really fun and also terrifying. This is a necessary addition because if you try to play the game like the older games in the series, which is basically flip-flopping everywhere, you will die, and that's because the enemy's AI has become a lot more aggressive. Yeah, they will get right in your face, man, and you gotta phase away from them so you don't freaking die. Also, just a quick thing to note, the amount of times I saw the same type of enemies made me want to cry. They scare me, and they made me mad. Luckily, though, we have a bunch of neat weapons that will totally destroy them, but you know, whatever, yeah. So we finally have a bunch of new weapons, which is so refreshing to see. Like, hey, I'm not against reoccurring weapons, but it definitely was reaching a point around the 2016 game for some weapons. You know the ones, yeah. I think my new favorite is the ricochet gun, because it just reminds me so much of the suck cannon, and I am in love with the 2002 game. But no, it's such a fun and cool weapon that basically implements a little mini game within it. It's really, really cool. There are other weapons too, like the new Rhino, which has some really cool references to other PlayStation series. The topiary sprinkler, which basically just turns enemies into plants. And Mr. Fungi, I love him. Yeah, I love him. There's also, of course, the rips that are in Dimensions, which when they do happen, they're crazy and they're crazy cool. I think it's showcased a lot more in the beginning part of the game, though. There's still a clear amount of dimensions ripping everywhere throughout the levels and planets, because, yeah, of course. It's very fun going through these dimensions, as well as the pocket dimensions, which are essentially, like, little side missions you can go, like, outside of the main story path. However, all of this is in the Ratchet and Rivet gameplay. There are two other gameplay styles in this game that I kind of forgot to mention, which are, of course, the obligatory Clink levels and the new Glitch levels, which both of these are here for more puzzles, type of gameplay. It's the puzzle gameplay. It's standard, you know it. Clank. So yeah, Clank and that one kit level are very similar to the puzzles that are in A Crack in Time. So it has like, in other words, it's very fun and are just some really, really cool concepts. There's just like really awesome concepts used within it. By the way,
Kit deserved more levels and screen time and everything. She literally had only one level. And I was really out here thinking maybe they bring back giant Clank levels, but instead with Kit, but no, I'm just really dumb.
Yeah, so those puzzles are fun, and then of course there are the glitch stages, which are also pretty fun. You just sort of shoot everything, but yeah, it's neat. You can skip all of these sections though if you really want. Rest in peace. So I'm probably going to describe this horribly, but the music is really great in this game, like really great. I think the last time I really listened to the whole soundtrack of the series, like an entry in the series where I just listened to the entire soundtrack and was like, this is great, was Here. What's Here really works, and it kind of reminds me or makes me feel like it's a combination of the music styles of the PS2 trilogy and the Future Saga, making it just really work. There are some techno-sounding songs, and it's great, man. We even get a villain song in the credits of the game. What? La, 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 la. I don't know. I mean, this soundtrack was made by the guy who did the soundtrack for the Jack games, as well as like a ton of other really well-known stuff, so it makes sense why it's really good. There isn't really much else to say about the music besides it's just really fun and that it's good. Lots of sounds make sense in context to the cutscenes and the dialogue. If there's one thing I'd really have to complain about, I guess, is that sometimes it's too quiet, but that's adjustable, so no one else's fault, so I don't know, it's just me. Oh boy, okay, oh yeah, man, yeah. So this section is probably gonna take up a good chunk of time before I say anything more. I do like the story as well as the characters, but this is probably the section where you'll see a bit more criticism from me, I guess. This is all coming from me as a longtime fan, by the way, so thought I'd mention that. Hey, okay, so let's begin. The story starts off with Rivet giving some context that she's a good guy, being a rebel in this terrible universe where Nefarious always wins. Then we get this super cool transition to Ratchet being kind of nervous to go into the public eye again and for a celebration of all things, which honestly hits me at least a bit because Into the Nexus was released 8 years ago. Yeah, me too, Ratchet. Oh my god. So we get to see some familiar faces, which are a bit odd choices to show. Quark makes sense. Captain Quark, yes, he should be here always. Skid is kind of weird, but I guess he was in the 2016 reimagining, so newcomers could be like, oh my god, whoa. And Rusty Pete. Okay. Don't get me wrong, I love Rusty Pete, guys. He's cool. But you know who should have been here? Yeah, she should have been here instead, Insomniac. I'm begging you. I will continue my ritual of summoning her in a new game, please. Anyways, we continue on, and of course some thugs, I mean goons for less, crash the party. Then we reach this one scene that made me really emotional for like no reason when I first saw it. So then Nefarious shows up, rips the fabric of dimension this time, and chaos ensues, yay! The three of them get transported to this other dimension, and this is where we have the three get split apart, or rift apart. Ratchet being alone, like always, Clank being basically kidnapped by Rivet, and Nefarious being mistaken as the alternate dimension Nefarious. So throughout the game, we kind of alternate back and forth between playing as Ratchet and playing as Rivet, which is a much better way of making newcomers and old fans like your new character. I think that somebody could have learned from this mistake. But yeah, so technically these two sides of the story happen at the same exact time, i.e. Clank getting taken by Rivet and Ratchet searching Nefarious City for Clank. Eventually, Ratchet runs into an alternate version of our boy Shadow Dude, or Skid McMarks. He basically shows him, or follows him, to get some help around the city, and wait, I lost my thought, oh no. He basically follows him to get some help around the city and figure out where exactly Clank is. Phantom gives us this coolio mechanic, the Phantom Dash, which is pretty neat, thanks man. Eventually Ratchet runs into where Nefarious has landed, which of course our Nefarious is, confused as the alternate universe version of Nefarious, and he gets smacked in the face for probably the 100th time. Ratchet gets an idea that, hey, somebody just kinda kidnapped Clank, and just decides to ditch this planet and go find his pal, yeah. Meanwhile, on Clank's side, he's just sort of stuck with Rivet attempting to convince her that he's not evil and actually from another dimension, but she doesn't trust him. So we have this fairly good interaction to Rivet. She's distrusting of Clank due to him being a robot, which in this universe makes sense since everything is taken over by Nefarious. It's such an interesting concept that could be fleshed out so much more, and it just isn't. I feel like maybe we needed some more time with Rivet being distrustful to Clank and them being an awkward, kind of relationship, which we sort of see throughout the level. It's just kind of is dropped though after Rivet rescues Clank after the boss battle. Okay, sorry, anyways. Rivet saves the Morts, which are fuzzy people with literally the same name, and she saves Clank from a giant centipede, and then discovers within Clank's memories that Clank wasn't lying, and he actually is from another dimension. And of course we see our boy Ratchet. Yeah. We continue on as Rivet. Weirdly enough, we can't choose Ratchet next. Where Rivet and Clank go to the series' staple arena section. Clank has a pretty great scene that makes me cry, not gonna lie.
I am feeling a bit responsible for all of this.
We then get introduced to Rusty Pierre. Yeah, the alternate universe version of Rusty Pete is French, and I think that's amazing. He's probably the coolest alternate version character until we get there, you guys. I already talked about her. I don't know. We go through the game, woo, and then we get to see Ratchet being introduced to Rivet, and Ratchet interact with Rivet and Clank, which honestly it's more of a scene of Ratchet kind of being reassured that Clank is okay, and I guess acknowledging there's another Lombax. It's weirdly ignored for some reason. So they all decide that we gotta build a new Dimensionator, a character named Gary that Clank met earlier on within the Clank sections also helps them out with their journey. We transition over now to being with Ratchet, who meets Gary. Look at his hat, he's epic, my guy. So Ratchet is on this planet trying to find some stuff to build the Dimensionator, yada yada yada. And then we get this surprise. This kid. Alternate Clank. Yeah! So she's the best character in this game. Also, I don't think it was super surprising. I mean, I think most fans were expecting an alternate version of Clank. But yeah, this is great. This helps because this is also clearly the best planet in the game. There are some little bits of Lombax lore around that you can just find, and they just sort of make more references to other PlayStation series.
My first dimension today. Pretty standard stuff. Except the colors there were so vivid, like, whoa. And there were these creatures. One of them even looked like a Lombax, but he had smaller ears, a mask, and a cane, and I think he was pulling some kind of heist? Whatever it was, it looked cool. Dimension 242Y8, quite possibly the cutest dimension I've ever seen. Oh, the inhabitants were all made out of wool, I think. They could literally make anything. And there was a really pleasant voice following me around everywhere. Oh, it was incredible. Oh, and what's even better? I think I'm finally close to mapping my last dimension.
We get some more info about Caden, or Ratchet's dad, while listening to these lorbs. Created by another Lombax named Mags. He basically hints that there were a handful of Lombaxes left behind in certain dimensions before they escaped Tachyon.
This is my final recording. If you're listening to this, that means you didn't make it to the new dimension with us, and I'm so sorry. We're trying hard to get everyone now, but our race is scattered across so many dimensions, This is not farewell. I left a copy of my dimensional map in the archives, and I marked down where we're all going. I wish I could have left you a Dimensionator too, but... hey, I'm only one Lombax. I hope you find your way back to us, and if you do, please, look me up. The name's Mags. And I'd love to hear your story.
But we see a bit more of Ratchet's perspective about the Lombaxes and how he feels about that whole situation. We also get this super cool sicko mode from Kit, making me feel like we really should have gotten a giant Clank section. So she's badass, and that's neat. Going back to Rivet and Clank, they're on a Nito planet to find a shard that looks suspiciously close to the comic book's shard. But yeah, and then the rest of the story is essentially these two duos going back and forth in this manner, running into Emperor Nefarious, who sometimes wins against them and feels like a step ahead of all their plans. Eventually, Ratchet, Kit, and Clank get taken and stuck in Zordoom prison, where Rivet saves all of them. We get this really great scene of conflict between Rivet and Kit, with Ratchet and Clank just awkwardly not saying anything until, I guess, this random scene.
Kit should be here.
Eventually, we reach the ending part of the game where, you know, they get all the stuff and they got all the characters, and they're like, whoa, and the Emperor Nefarious and Dr. Nefarious, they're all back in Ratchet's dimension. We just totally get to wreck them, man. And then they hint towards the next entry, finally going into the Lombaxes.
Finally.
So we even get to see some cameos of characters old fans love. A few scenes that really stood out to me are, one, the Fixer scene that showcases how Rivet and Clank aren't broken in that there's more to themselves that meets the eye, and two, after realizing that Kit was the person that basically chopped off Rivet's arm, that theme of brokenness somewhat comes back into play. It's such a fantastic theme and like great message that I think can apply to pretty much everyone to some extent. Kit is the embodiment of this message. She is the one who feels the guiltiest of the four main characters due to her actions, which is where we get that best scene in the game, the conflict between Rivet and Kit, which is a really great mirror to the storyline that occurs in the first Ratchet and Clank game. The bigger issue, though, is that all feels paced too fast, it's kind of odd. Like, we don't really get much time to just breathe with these characters, and the conflicts they are going through. It just comes across as sometimes this game holding back, that it's purposely ignoring things that are relatively important. The issue that I find is that this game, as amazing as it is, just doesn't exactly live up to the story that the Future Saga built up to some capacity. I'm not trying to say here that, oh yeah, Tools and Crack were perfect stories with no issues, but there's important story elements in those games that just get constantly ignored here. It's bizarre going through this game where we literally get to play as another Lombax character and have little to no information talking about the Lombaxes. Seeing Ratchet not mention Alistair Azimuth, an extremely important character to Ratchet, who was essentially Ratchet's only father figure, not being mentioned even once just feels off. Or even Orvis, Clank's dad, isn't really mentioned either, strangely enough. Or Dr. Nefarious, who very clearly was set up to have some sort of redemption arc, doesn't exactly get that. Basically, to try and clear up what I'm attempting to say, is that this game has a good story, more specifically with the new characters and their dynamic, probably because it's a less harsh version of the first game's kind of character's arc. And that theme of brokenness is present throughout the game. It just feels weirdly dismissive of its past, sort of picking and choosing what parts it wants to remember and not remember. It's just not committing as much as I thought it would in regards to the series' past. It just feels kind of wrong having characters like Talwyn, Lawrence, and the plumber not being present in this game. They aren't a necessity, obviously, but they'd help bring that organic feel that this is 100% a continuation within the mainline games. I still see so many people confused on whether this game is a sequel to the Reimagining or Nexus, which it sort of is to both, but it also is clearly more on Nexus's side, which I went through a whole video talking about that. Another thing I feel like I have to just bring up is how conflicting some of the story can actually feel if you think a little too hard about it. More so with what I mean is that Rivet's dimension is one where Nefarious always won, right? Then why is Emperor Nefarious a robot? Technically, he should be organic, right? Since he never lost to Quark or Quantum. Or what about Kit? She was technically designed by Nefarious, so maybe she's more of like an alternate version to Clunk in this universe rather than Clank? Does that mean that she was also built by the Zoni? Does she have her own version of Orvis? Why are the Lorbs in Rivet's dimension? Does that mean that Ratchet and Rivet are actually different Lombaxes looking for two different versions of the Lombaxes? Or did Caden and Mags just put all of this info in Rivet's dimension? Rivet has a tail, but Angela doesn't, and Angela is confirmed to be a Lombax, right? Rivet literally met Angela? You can see some of these type of questions just kinda make this more of a mess, at least for crazy fans like me. Rift Apart is a game that I didn't think would exist. Not gonna lie to you guys, but back in the first months of 2020, I was feeling pretty hopeless. I mean, real life was also bad, but I had so many fans telling me, basically for 4 years at that point, that would we even get another Ratchet & Clank game? And I kept reassuring, yeah, we would get another Ratchet & Clank game for sure, but even then, I was losing hope that it would happen. To put this into perspective, Into the Nexus released when I was in 7th grade. I'm a junior in college now. I'm amazed this game is real. Nearly everything it does is expertly crafted, and it's a fantastic game. However, I feel like its story and how some characters may have been portrayed is just where it gets a little too muddled, confusing. It's so weird. It's like everything is right there, but it just wasn't pushed to its story or character limits due to so many newcomers to the series. I think that Rift Apart is an awesome game, and the more I think about it, I cannot bring it to, I can't bring it to myself to put it in the top 3 Ratchet games due to these elements. I mean, it's a preference, you know, I know stories and everything, and I know that there's a lot of criticism for the Future Saga story and all of that, but I don't know, this is just how I feel, and I just thought I would give my own sort of perspective on this, I guess, as a longtime fan, because I've seen so many things about it, and I just feel like this hasn't really been discussed openly yet for some reason, and I just feel the need to do that. Okay, in conclusion, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is amazing. It's the game that I had waited so long for, and it's so good. It's so good. I am genuinely in shock that a new Ratchet & Clank game came out, and that it exists, and that Ratchet & Clank isn't dead. It's insane to me, and the gameplay and pretty much everything about this game is flawless. Even the story and the characters are great. I mainly was nitpicking as a fan there, but hopefully you guys can understand my perspectives. Sorry this video took so long for me to make. I have been incredibly busy and terrible with motivation in the past couple months. It's been a little rough, but it's okay. It's fine now, probably. I don't know. I'll hopefully have some more video ideas and stuff to do in the future. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.